So today, the 109th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And we've been here throughout the pandemic where we've been looking at a security topic 2 a week, where we've been examining the pros and cons and thinking differently about it. The idea of thought leadership is to think critically today about what's going on in order that we may get a better type of security tomorrow. And the topic today is one that, like most of them, have emerged from previous webinars. The benefits and pitfalls of security accreditations. Do they serve security professionals well? And there's something of an unqualified good, isn't there, about getting some sort of accreditation, either for the organization or for the individual. And today we're going to be trying to answer the question is what makes a good accreditation, what makes a bad one, and how can you tell? And as always, I've got three experts who are going to be speaking to us about their views. So you're going to get the chance to question them. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And once they've done that, we'll come to each of them for their opening statement. And then once they've each made their opening statement, we'll ask you, the audience, for your questions. Now, if you could get these in early, use the question and answer button at your bottom of your screen, and I'll endeavour to incorporate the discussion, the question in the ensuing discussion. Okay, so without further ado, let's go over to Canada and ask Greg to introduce himself. Greg.
Hi, Martin. My name is Greg Hurd. I hold a certified protection professional accreditation. I'm a fellow of the Security Institute, and I hold a master's of science degree in security and risk management from the University of Leicester. I currently have a small security practice where I help organizations with their security management programs.
Thank you very much indeed. So from Canada over to Worcester, and let's meet David. David, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Martin, folks. My name is David Cresswell. I run an organization called ISME, the International Security Management Institute, and we focus on security certifications for individuals. And we've been doing this for about 8 years now. And alongside our own Indigenous programs, we also run review programs for the ACES, CPP, and PSP certifications.
David, thank you very much indeed. 8 years, incredible. And finally, let's go back to Canada and meet Dana. Dana.
Morning. My name is Dana Adams. I'm currently doing some consulting with TELUS International. And like Greg, I hold a CPP, CISSP, have an MBA from the University of Redlands in Southern California. And I'm very much a past president of the certification board for ASIS, as ASIS, as Greg is as well. So we have a lot of interest in certifications.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Once again, an expert panel. You always, a lot of people write to me and tell me how good we are at choosing panelists. We try and get those who can offer different perspectives. And I think you'll agree today, we've got an interesting base for a discussion. So without further ado then, let's ask each of our panelists for their opening statement, 3 minutes for them to say what they think about this subject matter. Greg, over to you. Your opening statement, please.
Thanks, Martin. I'm firmly in the camp that I believe accreditation has been good for both the security industry and also the security professionals. I know this to be a fact insofar as the number of personal conversations I've had with folks that have gone through accreditation programs and have come out the other end in a much better shape than they were going into it. So I know that it's the journey, not the destination for most accreditation programs, but certification may not be for everybody. I mean, I'm also friends with many great practitioners who continue to work in their trade and their craft and have not gone through a certification program, but still are eminently qualified. So I guess it's what makes a certification program? And I'm a firm believer that there are three foundational elements, and that is a dedicated body of knowledge that's available to potential certificants, examination in one form or another, and continuing professional development. All of those are three important aspects that one must look for when looking for an accreditation program or evaluating accreditation program. Two other pieces of that are, previously I felt that the assignment of candidates or the application process was important. Today, I think we see a lot more flexibility in that. But one other foundational element that I'll throw in there for consideration is the examination of the program by external certifying bodies, at least insofar as the administration of the program. Through Dana and I's collective experience, we know that managing and keeping certification programs current and relevant is a large task. And not everybody puts that effort and rigor into their programs. So there is a consumer awareness that needs to happen as well when choosing or looking for a program. The best salespeople for programs tend to be those that have been through it and can give you a very factual and very personal review of their experiences. And I know as well too that as we see recruitment efforts in a very tight security market, certifications are asked for by recruiters. And many recruiters that I come in contact with have a better understanding of the certification programs and accreditation programs that are out there for positions in the security industry, especially senior positions. So as Dana said, I was a president, a member of and a president term for the ASIS International's accreditation programs. And so while my collective experience is based on that, we've touched other programs as well too.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Excellent. So some good pointers there. Let's move straight away to David. David, your opening statement, please.
Martin, good afternoon. I echo a lot of what Greg has already said in his statement, in that one would expect me to be an absolutely rigid advocate of professional certification. I am, but I also agree that it's not for everybody. And there are many people who hold very high office in security management who have chosen not to follow that route and have done perfectly well. So I think that's important in establishing that point. I suppose some people have described me over the years as being a driver of change in security management qualification. I actually think I'm a follower. I'm a follower of demand. And I think the profession itself has evolved over a number of years. When I first came into education, maybe almost 25 years ago, I went to work for a part of Group 4 that delivered security management training courses. And the demand there was for 6-week-long classroom courses where people were taking out of their workplace for 6 weeks, sat in a classroom, and perhaps over that 6 weeks had maybe 200, 250 hours of instruction, and then collectively passed a project at the end of it. And I thought that was fantastic. I mean, at the time, it was all we knew. So it was the best thing available. But then I started to think about this, and then through various changes and iterations, I went to work for another company, ARC, and we reduced that course to 2 weeks. And we had the same output in terms of professional development. So my view was changed. And clearly, we were following a demand from organizations that said, we can't send people over six weeks. Alongside that, we're running CPP preparation programs, which offered an alternative way to qualification and professional development. And those were very successful also. And then more recently, I established ISMI, the International Security Management Institute, and we developed a program called the Certified Security Management Professional. It's a diploma oblique certification. And that pretty much turned on its head everything that I believed prior to that, in that you had to get people sitting in a classroom being spoon-fed security management knowledge by an expert presenter for them to achieve strong professional development. And I'm actually amazed at the level of professional development we can now achieve through distance learning and professional certification. But I also support the view, I think Greg mentioned it, about that there are two aspects for me to any certification program. One is the journey, what do you get out of it in terms of how do you increase your competencies through the process? And the second is, once you've got your certification, how does that then help you become recognized, become selected, advance through the profession. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so let me encourage you, please, to get your questions in early using the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. And when you've got your question in, we'll endeavour to incorporate it in the ensuing discussion, which will happen straight after we've heard from our third panelist. Dana, your opening statement, please.
Excellent. Nice job, gentlemen. They covered most of the points very well, and probably to our to our detriment, we're all in alignment. I mean, accreditation, I believe in it and I support it very much. And throughout my career, I have embraced it. I think, Greg, you hit on the three elements perfectly, and I do appreciate that. And then talking about, David, the transition of what the industry is doing, the security industry. I believe that all certifications we know are not created equal. And I'm a member of several other organizations, and they have created certifications, but they haven't built the rigor around it. So there has to be some rigor. You have to keep it relevant. You have to keep it timely. The opportunity that's been presented to me in my current role is I work with the chief technology officer. So we have a innovation team, and we actually have dollars and resources, which is very unusual. But we are working with the public safety and helping those folks to leverage off of some of the really cool stuff that's coming out there on the technology field, and how they can use it to do their jobs better with AI, some of the machine learning, some of the video consolidation, and that type of analytics. Well, to speak with all of those people across the board, they look at your certification. So you with the convergence of, or I guess I would say the ongoing evolution of the security profession and convergence, whether you like it or not, you've got to be able to speak to these other elements. And I believe that by taking the time to leverage off of certifications and going through the programs, that it gives you the ammunition that you need and the knowledge that you need to communicate accurately to those folks. Part of the, I think, real driver is I see people that are transitioning into security from the military, from law enforcement, and that's what they're looking for. Is I've been asked that question, as you folks probably have, hundreds of times. What certifications are relevant for me? But those folks see the value of that, and they want to be able to put that on their resume, so they're able to articulate their competency in learning and continuing to learn. I think the third element that I'd like to kind of throw out there is the continuing education of that. I hate to use the word forces, but it does force you to keep up with what's happening in the industry. And every year you get a little reminder, and you do that with what I think are the premier certifications, and it seems to work out very well. So I think we have to continue to evolve. I think that certifications are important. They have to continue to evolve and stay up with what's happening on the planet. That's the end of mine.
Dana, thank you very much indeed. Well, look, questions piling in. Without further ado, let's go to our panel and start putting some of these questions to the panel. Start off with you, Greg, and then I'll come to you, David. A question from Dennis Shep. What are the thoughts of the panel towards the value of a reputable third-party organisation such as ANSI or ISO to endorse an accreditation or certification? The thing is, you see, Greg, these give some sort of credibility, don't they? But it's not an unqualified good, is it, Greg?
The additional oversight from an external examining body is important. It can help the consumer or the potential certificant understand that the administration of the program is solid, or is at least being looked at on a relatively frequent basis. And I know through my past experience, an ANSI audit or an accreditation review is a very significant amount of work for the organization, because it has to make sure that all the elements align. And it's not just the fact that, well, we've got the dates that we hand out certificates or the examinations, but it's the substantive and fundamental operation of the program. So I think it's important. I think that if you want your accreditation program to thrive, you need to subject yourself to that external evaluation. And that also helps regulators and other groups that you would come in contact with have some level of assurance around the rigor of your program. Now, again, most standards are around the administration of the program versus the actual content. But there is an assumption that if you're working your program properly, you're examining your content frequently and making changes as you see beneficial to the members and the body of knowledge.
Yeah, okay. I mean, David, I mean, this is the point, though, isn't it? That it's about the administration. It's not about the impact that they have. Your thoughts, David, to Dennis Shep's question.
Yeah, I take a slightly different view to Greg, and it goes back to my opening statement in that I think from my perspective, I'm keen to follow demand rather than drive change that may not be the change that's required. And so if I look at statistics, since in the 8 years that we've been operating, we've enrolled probably 6,000 people onto the Certified Security Management Professional Program. I can't think of a single occasion when anybody has written to us and said, are we ISO accredited or certified, or are we ANSI certified? But what I can think of are very many occasions when people have written to us and said, who accredits you? What's the UK awarding body that accredits you? So the bodies that I don't know whether it's you, Martin, or whether it's Dennis who mentioned ANSI and ISO, they serve a purpose, and I'm sure they do an excellent job with qualifications like the CPP. But I guess there are other bodies, such as in our case, IQ, Industry Quality. Well, I beg your pardon, it's become Skills for Justice, SFJ awards. I guess there are other cases where we have, certainly from a UK perspective, very, very good awarding bodies. I mean, if I take the case of SFJ, for example, they will dip sample every intake that graduates, and so they dip sample us 6 times a year, and they inspect us annually quite rigorously. And I think as long as you've got those processes in place by a reliable partner, I think that perhaps is what's necessary.
Good. Nothing wrong with disagreeing in this game. Dana, next question is from Dawn Holmes. I'm going to come to you first, Dana, if you wouldn't mind. Stay by. Dawn says, when I started out, she faced a fair bit of rejection due to gender, age, lack of police military experience, possibly, mentions accent, possibly. Certifications boosted her confidence and let me get out there. Do you think, Dana, because of LinkedIn and some people with essay length post-nominals, the accreditations are starting to become meaningless? Are they the special differentiators, if anyone has them? Interesting point. David, I'll bring you in afterwards. Dana, your thoughts, please, on Dawn Holmes' question.
That's a good question. And I mean, this is part of the evolution of life, not just the security industry. And with social media and those contacts, I would tend to think, or at least my belief is that I think they're more important than ever. You've got to have a differentiator out there. And just because you can write the best profile or have somebody write your profile for you, however that be, some of those marketing folks would give them a little more work. But I think that with those profiles out there, that you've got to have some substance to it that people understand. So acknowledged in the industry. David, you mentioned the CPP, the CISSP, the Certified Security Management Professional. I mean, I think those are very knowledgeable in the industry, and especially for those people that are entering into the industry and the young professionals. And I think part of what we accomplished over the last 10 years is we have made established certifications for people who are entering in that don't have as much experience, and you've got to be able to demonstrate that. And by taking those certifications, again, you're going to have to, you can't just walk in and pass them, or at least you shouldn't be able to. You've got to put some effort in and do some research and do some studying to make sure that you understand the different domains or areas of expertise.
Fair enough. David, let me come to you. Do you think, though, there's a danger that people will start collecting qualifications? And is that a good thing? Rather than, I suppose, which is Dawn's question, is that if that's the game, it's a slightly different game to what was the original intention of certification and qualification. David?
Martin, I'm going to slightly dodge your question because I know that people, professionals, clients of mine use LinkedIn and some display very long post nominals with great pride. So I'm not going to say anything which may dent their pride, and I think it's a personal choice. If you think it's beneficial, then I would say do it. Personally, that's my view. On the issue of military police, I may be prepared to be more controversial and challenging on that, in that I think one of the problems in this sector, and maybe this Dawn will recognize this, is that many organizations, when somebody leaves a security management post who's been in the police or military, they will often be comfortable hiring something that they're familiar with, and they will know the military background, they will know the skills that brings, they will know the police background, know the skills that brings. So quite often you find you will find that, and there's a current case that I won't name the company, but there's a current head of security being sought at the moment, where it specifically says on the job advert, military or police, because those are the skills that the person leaving the post is familiar with. So I think you're up against a problem there. Now, not all companies do that. I'm thinking of companies like Amazon. These are client companies: Amazon, Google, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, LinkedIn. I've been looking at some of their candidate information as a preparation to coming into this meeting, and not only do they tend to hire the younger security manager, but also, I mean, if we take LinkedIn, for example, their two most recent regional security managers to go through one of our programs are female. So I think there's much more to be done to raise the profile of females and non-military, non-police professionals in this profession. And I know Dawn personally, and I know that she's in a position right now to drive change for the better in that respect.
Okay, just very quickly, if I could bring you in, Greg, while we're on this subject matter, because Mike Cummins has asked this specific question about whether those transitioning from the police and military, in particular, need these accreditations. It's a slight variation on Dawn's question, but take it to the next stage. Do you think that's the case? That do they particularly need to show relevance to the modern security world?
There's a lot of discussion on what helps or assists transition. And I think it's a process of which accreditation has a big part. I think there's other elements as well too, and it's understanding kind of the new world that you're transitioning to, availability of certificate level or course level work to be able to provide you with a view to what security management may be about, and then begin that journey, if you so choose, to go to accreditation. And I think it's the toolbox analogy, because you're coming from one profession with a toolbox, and what is going to help you to fill that toolbox for the next job or transition through into civilian life and the private sector or specific public sector jobs. And I do a little bit of coaching on this with folks, and I find that it's not necessarily going straight to accreditation. I think it's a process of developing foundational knowledge, and including academic pursuits as well too. And I think that it's a combination of a number of things, which may eventually lead you to accreditation, but maybe not. And I think transition is an extremely important part of a candidate's success, and also a better sense of well-being in terms of making that change from an organization that you've been with for a long time, deeply embedded with, going to something that could be very strange and very different.
Okay, and also a different culture in terms of profit and
Oh, absolutely.
surface, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dana, question for you here from Mike Gibbs. It's an interesting one in the sense that he says, I'm a proud holder of the CPP, which is, for those of you who don't know, is the perhaps main or perhaps most common ASIS qualification around the world. And he says, I worry that the certification barely registers in HR departments. The number of CPPs pales compared to CFEs and CISSPs. What does this say about its value? Dana, the trouble is that ASIS and people like you have been promoting this. And the trouble is it's a tick box exercise and it isn't being respected by those that most matter. There's the danger. Dana?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Thanks, Mike. I always appreciate you, man. Love you. I know him well, by the way. And that's something that I think that you have to be cautious of from the standpoint that you can get complacent and you can get a tick box exercise that goes through that. The CPP, it has maintained probably a smaller group than the CI. I have CISSP as well and CFE as well. So I do have those other certifications, but I think that for lack of a better term, traditional security person, the CPP is a nice broad certification. It kind of gives you that knowledge base, foundational knowledge base that gives you good perspective on the industry. And to keep it from becoming tick box or becoming stale, we are in that particular area, the CPP area, and then you've got your specialty areas too. I want to bring those up. You got the PS, the physical security. You've got the investigations. And then you've got the young professionals. So you've got some other fragmented certifications that support that as well, that increase those numbers really. I think from a overall perspective, the rigor that goes around the testing of the various ASIS certifications, we look at the questions every year. And we weed those out, we update, we add new questions, we take questions out. So we try to maintain some relevancy, but Greg may have a different perspective on that, or David.
Well, I'm going to come to Greg on that precise point. So, Greg, if it's that good, why then, as Mike says, is this barely register on HR departments? I mean, Greg.
Well, I'll call it a misfortune of fortune insofar as there are more certificates. I think there is a movement among security directors who have the certificate to look to their HR people when they're developing job statements or role descriptions and including that. And popularity may be one thing, but HR professionals, especially recruiters, are looking for those types of programs that will help find them the right applicant. So it's a challenge for accreditation programs to remain relevant. And I think the question around recruiting is that there are more people that are talking about it, more people that are talking about accreditations, not just CPP, but all the rest of them that are the top tier qualifications out there. So recruiters are absolutely become more savvy about them. But Dana brings up a good point. I think the time that you stop looking at your content and stop looking at relevancy, then the certification gathers dust and becomes irrelevant. And that brings up a good question. I mean, very rhetorical on my part, but what's the future of accreditation? What does it look like going forward? I think there's one danger in trying to mix and match too many disciplines in a single accreditation. I think some organizations do fantastic jobs on looking at cybersecurity and IT security. I think others do a better job at kind of sticking with the mainstream things that their population knows well in terms of organizational security. And as new things develop, there's a tendency to look at certification programs for them. But again, I think that's the challenge to the potential certificant or the consumer, as I put it in this case, what makes sense for them and what's the validity of the program going forward. And let's be honest, it's an important part of your employment search and transition activities and professional development to move on to other roles. And I think that certification, accreditation, all helps with that. But it's just the type of program, you've got to be very careful about your program selection.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. David, I'm going to change tack here, but I'm going to come to you first. Glenn Kitteringham has done a PhD in training, and he says one of the key elements of training, certification, education is the quality and accreditation of trainers themselves. Good question for you, David. This is an area the industry is falling short on, as many think because they have done a job for a certain number of years, while likely making them an expert, does not automatically qualify them to train others. What does the industry need to do, David, to correct the deficiency in this approach? First of all, do you agree it's a deficiency? And secondly, what needs to be done, if you do?
A difficult one, Martin. Again, I can draw on my own experience, and I would say that no number of qualifications can necessarily make you a good trainer or make you a good program leader. That's a talent. It can be developed through training, but even then, it will always be your audience who will determine whether you're a good trainer or not. I think as a bare minimum, you do need qualification. Again, if I go back to my own background, when I first joined Group 4, Group 4 were absolute that, and at that time you were leading the program, I believe. Group 4 were absolute that you should go through a master's in security and risk management as a basic qualification. And I wasn't really allowed to be let loose on live security managers until I'd had achieved that, and a CPP. So I think as a bare minimum, a degree and some sort of certification, whether it's CPP, CSMP, CISSP, is necessary. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to perform to customer expectations when you're put in front of a class, obviously.
The only thing is, David, of course, you are going to get found out pretty quickly, aren't you? If you don't, before, as you've just said, social media, people informing one another. I guess, and just to say, in the world of universities, for years, as a university lecturer, I was judged. I was called a lecturer and I was called a professor, but I was judged not on the quality of the teaching. Never, in fact, during that period. It was all about output on qualifications. So it's not just the world of training. Academia has also been shifting here. Okay, look, thank you for that. I'm sure we're going to come back to that in a different way, but I want to push on because I want to try and incorporate some of the other questions. Then let me come to you for a question from Jerry Shields. What's your view on the issue of quality versus quantity of membership? In other words, is there a potential as we mature as a profession for some of the associations, let me call it that, be tempted to dilute the value of gaining membership due to the need to maintain their own viability? This is the point. Qualifications can make money. Is there a danger that associations pander to that? And as such, association qualifications become less important perhaps than other ones, when in a security world, there are so many associations. Dana, your thoughts? And I'll just very quickly get a comment from you on this, Greg, but very quick. Dana, if you wouldn't mind a concise answer.
Yeah, I do think and that's part of your due diligence, ongoing due diligence with your certifications and your associations. You're right that, it's like, it's the old adage, it's what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And I see these come up all the time where they'll grandfather you in here or give you this just based upon your experience. And I think that does dilute the value. So you have to be extremely careful to maintain your credibility and have some rigor around what you put out there as an organization and as a certification.
Is there a danger though, Dana, that, and then you're a good person to ask this, that accreditations from associations are also about generating income? And there's never been more important, perhaps, given what's been happening recently with the economic climate. I mean, do we need to look skeptically at that particular concern?
I do think it is a concern, and I do agree with you at times, because it is about revenue. It's not always about revenue. It's finding that balance between being able to provide a rigorous exam and maintain a certification and your standards, versus just for your whatever, your $100, $200, put it in, give us your information, and you get it. So yeah, there is. I think there is a concern. I think we have to, as an industry, we have to. Police may be a strong word, but we do have to have oversight over that and understand what the value of that is.
Greg, just a point from you on that. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you look at it from two perspectives. One is the number of members who go on through the organization to gain certification. I think if you look at the percentages, you'll find that there's not everybody, it's not 100% in terms of those that maintain membership to those that gain certification. And I'd have to refresh my memory on a couple of the designations right now to see what the uptake levels are. I did get a rude awakening though, in terms of looking at the monetary aspect of a program that I was involved in. And I had made the statement one time while I was being interviewed that no, the program was self-sustaining and generating income. And then I had to look at the balance sheets for the year, and I found that we were okay, but it wasn't a significant moneymaker, because on the back end of that, there was a lot of administration, there was a lot of activity and the necessary costs of maintaining a top quality accreditation, including audits, including all of the external aspects that you wanted to subscribe to outwardly have your program look very solid and be solid, and substantially solid. So I think if there's programs out there that are generating huge amounts of revenue for certifying organizations, then I would ask a couple of questions about, okay, so what do you do behind the scenes to keep the program relevant and stable and credible and all of those things that Dana mentioned. So it's definitely a concern. And it's one of those things that I think probably a person who feeling that they're ready to go undergo certification would want to ask of other people in their network and reach out and gain that information.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. David, I'm just going to go very brief, because in your opening statement, you mentioned your own journey where you had got round to seeing the benefits of distance learning. Just a quick question from Derek Martin. But you said, given the move to remote learning and working whereby you do not have to live locally, do you think that that this makes accreditations all the more doable and possible? And are you confident they're just as good? David, very, very quickly, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'll answer the second part of your question first. I think they're just as good, without a doubt. There are some very, very good classroom organisations out there, no doubt about it. The feedback that I see is exceptional. Are they more doable? Yes, I think one of the things I didn't mention about my journey from classroom training to distance learning programs is the price difference, and that's a fundamental factor in whether or not they're doable. You know, if you want to come into a classroom for 2 weeks, you're looking at £6,000-7,000. In my previous organisation, only organisations with deep pockets can afford to send their people on courses like that. If you want to do a professional certification, whether it's our own, whether it's CPP, PSP, well, this is very small money. So they are universally accessible. And if I may, I just wanted to pick up on one of the points that somebody made previously about CPP and growth and getting this message through to employers. And I lament the fact that we don't have a recruiter on this panel that we could say, well, aren't we getting this message across to employers? But we tend to see things within the world in which we operate, guys, in Canada, America, the UK. But if you look at places like India right now, for example, massive growth in demand for CPP. And I'm sure that employers increasingly in different parts of the world are saying, yes, we do want to hire people with certifications.
Yeah, okay. And there is a question from a chap from India here, or someone from India, saying that there needs to be more help given in to recognise that. Let me move on to the final question, if I might. But I want to just go. It's from Javan Simpson, and very, very interesting question, I think, actually. What are the broad perspectives on the merits of incorporating professional certifications, accreditations into wider educational packages, such as military-based training and university degrees? Greg, I'm going to ask you for a brief answer here, and I'll get a brief answer from you as well, Dana, if I wouldn't mind. Just very brief, because we're running out of time. Greg.
The opportunity for synergy between academic programs and certifications, I think there's a path for it. The aspect is in boiling down to the individual certificate or the participant. What is your experience base? What are the things that you need to have to be successful in gaining certification? And in addition to academic training, what's your experience base? What's your time in the industry? How does that all help? And if the complete package comes, then there may be some things to look at as a realistic and possible way forward in that type of synergy.
Okay, I'm going to get a brief comment from Dana and a brief one from David. Dana, same point. I mean, this is easy to say, right? This is this idea that we can combine the theory with the practice. In reality, doing it well is problematic because they're two different skill sets, two different bodies of knowledge, two different ways of thinking. Some might have come to the conclusion, just better do one at a time and better approach them separately if you're going to do it for any length of time. Dana?
Yeah, I think, Greg, good points across the board on that. And I do think there's some synergy, and I think there's opportunity there. To your point, it's one thing to have an academic understanding. It's another when you actually have to play the game, and there is no replacement for experience. So which is why I think, with some of these certifications, you must have some baseline experience. But on the other hand, I think that, and I think we're seeing it in the industry, probably not fast enough, but bringing in these young professionals and bringing in the next generation, I think that we're going to have to, as an industry, make that adjustment and figure out how to include, I think, more effectively the academic side, because I didn't know what it was when I was going through my degree program, and also with the military and the law enforcement. I think getting that segue out there and providing that more of that opportunity, even though I think we do a good job with the liaison part with different organizations, we still have to get out there and get in front of those folks that are transitioning in careers and get them on the front end of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any last comment to you, David, if you wouldn't mind, just 30 seconds, because in some ways this is a bit your world, isn't it? A bit what you've been doing. Your thoughts?
Sorry, just rephrase that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get this bit about whether the two worlds of practice and academia, theory and practice, how much is it possible to combine these, or are they two separate bodies of knowledge that need to be taught separately? Just 30 seconds, if you wouldn't mind, David.
No, I think absolutely. We've proven it through our programs that you can combine assessing proficiency and knowledge within the same award. I think it depends on the vehicle that you use for assessment. And on that point about experience, I think it's important also not to over-egg the amount of experience that we need to do this sort of role. There are lots of security management functions in companies, especially those that tend to hire a younger, more diverse workforce. That you certainly wouldn't need 20 odd years experience. I mean, if you can fly a fighter plane after 6 years training, I'm sure you can manage many security posts.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, look, panel, thank you. Excellent. I mean, we could have gone on. There were more questions we didn't get around to. Always the best way to leave it, and a reason to come back and do it. Some fantastic insights. Don't forget, There'll be a blog on the website tomorrow about this webinar, and also a copy of the recording, so you can go and watch it all over again, as you can the previous 108. So thank you very much indeed to all of you. And I know that chat was busy as well. A few final comments from me, if you wouldn't mind. I'll just say that there's a major research going on looking for security officers to take part in a research survey to understand the modern role and job complexity of security officers. We want their views. So we'll send you details after the webinar, but if you can engage and get them to complete the survey, we'll be very, very grateful. Also to say, the OSPA's entries are open in Kenya, Romania and the United States, and also the Tackle Economic Crime Awards in the UK, but more OSPA's are going to open soon. Talking of which, let me tell you about the Cyber OSPAs. They've opened this week, the first Cyber Outstanding Security Performance Awards. All those cyber associations are already supporting this initiative. More are about to be announced. If your cyber association's not there, get them to let us know. We'd love to involve them. And finally to say that we're going to be going through it all again on Thursday, where the webinar title is, what does a diverse workforce look like? How is the security sector faring up? I mean, this diversity issue, you could be forgiven for believing it's all about numbers. Surely there's got to be more to it than that. We'll be finding out on Thursday. So thank you once again to my panel. Thank you once again to you, the audience. Thank you in the background to Christine Brooks and Hannah Miller. Hopefully we'll see you again before too long. Hopefully on Thursday at the same time. But until then, wherever you are in the world, stay safe.